Welcome to part 2 of Alamein. Now, what we just saw there was a good example of the use of guerrilla warfare and stealth in this game. That can play a huge factor. Now, what I could have done was stay within the flag capture radius and keep the flag neutral and just try to hide while that guy tried to find me. But since there was no help on the way, the best technique, I think, was to just stay out of sight completely. He would never suspect that there was someone there waiting for him when he left or when he got out of the tank, because he would have assumed that if there was someone there, that defender would have tried to actually defend the flag by either attacking his tank with their grenades or by just keeping the flag neutral. The British are doing an excellent job so far this round. We've got 194 to 150, and the Axis have no flags at all, and they're continuing to lead tickets. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a drive-by on their main base again and see what's going on. Presumably all of their people are at their main base. I don't know what kind of problem they're having. I didn't notice the air power on our side being too overwhelming. I mean, we saw many examples of Axis tanks roaming about pretty freely. But another thing is, in that last scenario we saw where I was defending that one flag, because the flags are so separate from each other. Oh, it looks like there are two guys in that plane because that was a bomber plane, where they have both a seat for the tail gunner and the pilot. And the Germans are now using their jeeps just any way to get out of their base and head toward a flag. And that large plane you saw was the British heavy bomber plane. There's no German heavy bomber plane on this map. There are versions of that on some of the other maps like Battle of Britain. But generally in most maps, when you see a heavy bomber plane, the really large one, it's just going to be on the British side on a desert map probably. There's also one on Bocage and I think on Market Garden too. Ideally, if you're doing a drive-by, you just want to kind of weaken the planes that are unoccupied. So if someone does try to get in one of those, you can quickly kill them and get credit for a kill. And the alternative, if you damage a plane heavily, people just won't bother getting into it. If you destroy a plane completely, it'll respawn after a certain period of time. Okay, I just took a major hit there, driving over that ravine or whatever. Yeah, sometimes it's weird, the fall distance and the way the game registers that often is, and see, there's a good example of what I'm talking about with the planes on this map. If you've got really good pilots on one side or another, they can just completely annihilate all the tanks very easily, but it takes a lot of skill on their part. But anyways, as I was saying about the fall distance, the tanks are really weird about it. You can roll a tank over on its side and it can survive for a while, but on the other hand, if you drive too quickly over railroad tracks, it'll destroy a tank. I have the option of either staying here and defending or going toward that northern flag. This is a good flag to defend. There are a lot of different places where you can hide. There's also the anti-aircraft gun. And you often have people from the northern base, if it's held by the other side, they'll send people with jeeps over here all the time, so you get a lot of good infantry action that way. Otherwise, this is pretty much an all-vehicle map, either tanks or airplanes. And if the pilots are really good, it's basically an all-airplane map, it seems like. This is one of the rare maps on this game where people may be inclined to do a lot of defense simply because there's so much travel distance between the flags. I mean, I could try to walk over to the northern base and attack it, but that would take forever. And I'm just as likely to get action just staying around here, knocking out some planes, and seeing if anyone comes in a Jeep. Overall, it's a much slower paced map, and I think that's kind of what they were going for a little bit. Battlefield 1942 doesn't have just one type of... Now that was interesting. We had, you can see the little empty Jeep icon appear there, but he came from a completely unexpected direction for me. You almost always get him attacking, going from that northern base, heading southward over to here, and they attacked from the north. That was really weird. He must have come in from the south, or maybe even from the main base, and just swung around through the southern route there. But of course, once you get a Jeep, you can kind of move around a bit. You can attack bases. You don't have to just stay in one place and defend. But as I was saying earlier, the El Alamein map tends to be a slower paced map, and Battlefield 1942 really goes for variety and a scope of a lot of different kinds of maps. They're not all twitchy urban maps like Stalingrad or Berlin. They've got some slower moving maps like this that they try to be more strategic, or maybe they're just trying to give planes a chance to do target practice. I don't know. The Germans at this point really have no chance of winning this. They can't capture all of our flags or all of our bases because there's an uncapturable base. So they're so far behind. I mean, they would basically have to hold all 3 flags or 2 out of the 3 flags and inflict ticket bleed against us for the rest of the map, and that might not even be enough to make up the difference. I think overall the reason why the Germans failed on this map was simply because they couldn't hold the eastern flag, which is very important to do. Normally the split is one team will hold each of the northern and southern bases, and then the winner will be the side that holds onto the eastern flag. So they didn't really make much of a play for the eastern flag, and they weren't able to hold on to the northern base either. Now, you did see a couple of examples during this round of where the Germans had 1 or 2 guys, maybe even with a tank, attacking the base where I was the only defender. And in any of those cases, if I hadn't been there, they would have taken the flag uncontested and may have been able to hold on to it. Or if they had, in those cases where I was there and they almost killed me, or like in the case of the tank, I happened to be doing guerrilla warfare there. In this map, because there's so much of a separation between the flags, each individual flag can have very important 1 versus 1 confrontations, and whoever happens to win those may have a big strategic impact overall. For instance, when I managed to stay out of sight of that one tank, and perhaps I was going to go steal one of those planes. Well, anyways, this map is pretty much over here, so they're probably glad just to get a target to shoot at since I'm here. But anyways, if the Germans had managed to take that northern flag, for instance, which the odds were in their favor, that could have prevented ticket bleed if they had kept another flag neutral or held it. Or if they held another flag, they could have inflicted ticket bleed upon us. And of course, since there are only 3 flags on this map, 2 out of 3 for ticket bleed. So 1 flag makes the difference between one team inflicting bleed upon the other one or having ticket bleed inflicted upon them. And I guess I'll just kind of finish out the round here. The ticket bleed will end the round really quickly, but yeah, there you go. The British basically held on to all 3 flags the entire time. When one side has all 3 flags, it becomes extremely frustrating for the other side because they're all cooped up in the main base. They're all competing to grab the same vehicles. They want some kind of transportation. And the enemy planes have free reign to attack their main base and kill them on the airfield. So it can be, you can often find a situation there where one side just gets completely trapped and they're just not able to dislodge themselves. I think the British overall have an easier time on this map because they're closer to the eastern flag. But generally, though, that it hasn't been my experience that one side tends to dominate on this map. It seems to be pretty even. Half of the time Allies win, half the time Axis win. But there you go. And that'll do it for Let's Play Battlefield 1942 El Alamein. See you on the next episode.